Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave.
On behalf of every father and every mother.
Wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors.
And paves the way for a new history.
This is the news concerning the Russian invasion of Ukraine for the week of July 21st, 2024. On the night of July 16th, a fire erupted at a plant in the village of Ukrenergo in the Kursk region following a drone attack. The incident was reported by the Russian Telegram channel Astra, with local media and social media pages sharing photos and videos showing the fire engulfing the plant's roof. Alexei Smirnov, acting governor of the Kursk region, confirmed the fire around 1 a.m. on Telegram, attributing it to a Ukrainian drone dropping an explosive device on the plant. He assured that none of the employees were injured and that firefighters from 2 districts were working to extinguish the blaze in one of the processing shops. The fire, which covered an area of 400 square meters, led to the evacuation of workers before the arrival of firefighters. By morning, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed that the air defense systems had shot down 1 drone over the Kursk region during the night. The affected facility, the Kornevsky plant of low-voltage equipment, is a major manufacturer of low-voltage switchgear and control equipment in Russia, with its products used both domestically and internationally. This incident follows a similar event on July 13th when an oil depot in the Semlyansky district of Rostov caught fire after another drone attack. A law enforcement source reported to Ukreninform that naval and air drones from the security services of Ukraine successfully shot a Russian Coastguard base on Lake Donuzlav. According to the source, the previous night, Russian naval forces were conducting exercises to protect the waters of the Donuzlav in Crimea. However, the SSU drones disrupted the exercises, rendering the Russians unable to defend the base, let alone the lake area. The combined drone attack targeted and disabled several key facilities at the Coast Guard base, including the headquarters with its control center, an ammunition and equipment depot, an electrical substation, technical facilities, and enemy firing positions. The Ukrainian Navy has also warned that Russia is hiding ships in Novorossiysk, but Sea Baby drones will soon be able to reach them there as well. On July 16th, Ukraine's military intelligence, UR, announced that it had successfully hacked almost 100 Russian websites supporting the Kremlin's war efforts. This operation, conducted on July 15th with assistance from the volunteer hacker community, took the targeted websites offline and replaced their homepage with an image of a bloody pig's head. UR stated that the cyber attack aimed to disrupt the internal information of companies serving the Russian public sector. Among the targeted companies were MIT Group, which develops corporate websites, United Crane Technologies, a manufacturer and seller of lifting equipment, and Rumos Lada, a Lada car dealership. On July 17th, the Russian state-controlled media outlet RBC reported a significant increase in recruitment efforts by Russian companies in Africa based on industry data. The surge comes as Russia faces a labor shortage due to the combined impacts of its full-scale war against Ukraine, the departure of hundreds of thousands of working-age men, COVID-19 related mortality, and an aging population. The data shows that 7 of the 10 countries with the highest increase in job vacancies posted by Russian companies were in Africa. Kenya experienced the largest growth, with job postings increasing from 161 in the first half of 2023 to nearly 6,500 in the first half of 2024. Other countries outside Africa, such as Albania, Belgium, and Pakistan, also saw a rise in Russian job listings. Despite this, Kazakhstan and Belarus, Russia's neighboring countries, still account for the majority of foreign job postings. The most sought-after job sectors for foreign workers remain IT, customer service, marketing, and other white-collar jobs. However, there has been a notable increase in vacancies in construction and agriculture in recent years, according to RBC. Historically, Russia has been the destination for migrant workers from Central Asia, who typically engage in manual labor and other blue-collar work. However, since the work is often informal, it is unclear whether RBC included this data in their analysis. The majority of foreign workers who entered Russia in 2024 came from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, consistent with previous years. Additionally, there's been a growing trend of recruiting foreigners to join Russia's military efforts in Ukraine. Some foreigners are directly recruited, while others have been reportedly deceived by false job listings and subsequently forced into military service upon their arrival in Russia. France is preparing a new military aid package for Ukraine, which was recently discussed by the presidents of both countries. According to sources in the French Defense Ministry, as reported by European Pravda, Kyiv will receive 128 VAB armored vehicles, 18 self-propelled Caesar howitzers, and 24 light tanks. France will also supply Ukraine with anti-tank missiles, trucks, and radars. Starting in September 2024, over 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers are expected to begin training in French military centers. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov and British Defense Minister John Healey have signed a bilateral agreement on military aid involving a £2 billion British pound loan to support Ukraine's defense needs. This loan will fund the purchase of modern weapons, military equipment, and other defense materials in line with NATO standards. According to Umerov, the loan will enable large-scale initiatives to enhance Ukraine's defense capabilities, particularly in air defense, reducing the burden on the state budget and quickly providing the necessary weapons. The loan is granted for 15 years with the possibility of extension and comes with a favorable interest rate. A joint panel of officials from both governments will oversee the loan's use to ensure transparency and effective fund management. The government of Ukraine has increased defense spending by nearly $12 billion as announced by the Defense Ministry on July 19th. Of the total increase, nearly $9 billion will go to the Defense Ministry. Of this, around 6.5 will be spent on military salaries and one-time financial assistance in the case of a soldier's death or injury. Additionally, $1.1 billion is allocated for purchasing and modernizing weapons, military equipment, and ammunition, while around $113 million is earmarked for logistics. The government also allocated around $1 billion for constructing fortifications by the Ukrainian Armed Forces and state security services. Another $215 million will be provided for the needs of the state special transport service. Ukraine finances its defense sector through taxes and military bonds. From January to May, state budget expenditures for security and the defense sector amounted to $17.6 billion, amounting to around 58% of the total expenditures, according to the Finance Ministry. Ukraine is increasing its supply of drones to the army, potentially surpassing Russia in terms of numbers, according to Deputy Commander-in-Chief of Ukraine's Armed Forces, Vadim Sukharevsky, in an interview with Army TV. Ukraine aims to scale up its domestic production of unmanned aerial vehicles, targeting a production of at least 1 million drones in 2024. In the first half of 2024, Ukrainian soldiers were said to receive at least 6 times more drones compared to the previous year, according to Sukharevsky. He credited this achievement to the joint efforts of the General Staff and the Defense Ministry. Currently, Ukraine has over 165 types of drones being tested and used on the battlefield. Sukharevsky noted that Ukraine might have surpassed Russia in drone numbers, though Russia's ties with China provided with an advantage in replacing components. Throughout Russia's invasion, both countries have heavily invested in drone technology, which has become crucial in the war. On June 11th, Kyiv officially presented its unmanned systems forces following a decree by President Zelensky 4 months earlier to create a separate branch of the armed forces dedicated to improving drone operations. Ukrainian developers have demonstrated flight tests of a jet drone designed to intercept air targets, as reported by the military journal Telegram channel. The Bullet unmanned aerial vehicle system is intended to combat enemy reconnaissance and attack drones, as well as helicopters. In the footage released, an experimental airplane-type drone is seen taking off from a concrete pavement, performing flight maneuvers and then landing. According to telemetry data, the drone reached a speed of about 130 kilometers per hour during flight. While this speed is insufficient to intercept air targets, the use of a jet engine suggests that the actual maximum speed could be significantly higher. The drone is equipped with a camera similar to those used in FPV drones. The cost of the Bullet is around $140,000, which includes a ground control station and 5 aircraft. In April 2024, Militarny reported that Ukrainian developers introduced a model of loitering munition capable of striking targets at an operational and tactical depth of over 100 kilometers. This drone is designed to be multi-purpose, enabling it to hunt enemy drones. With an electric motor, it can reach speeds of around 180 kilometers per hour, allowing it to intercept the Russian Orlan-10 and Lancet UAVs. While full-fledged models of anti-aircraft drones are still being tested, Ukrainian engineers have adapted common FPV copters for the task. Having developed detection and interception tactics, the Ukrainian military has successfully deployed these drones on a large scale. In recent months, Ukrainian drones have destroyed several Russian reconnaissance aircraft in the air. The Delta combat system has successfully passed an inspection by a leading international information security consulting company, confirming its compliance with established information protection requirements. This was stated by the Ministry of Defense press service. Defense Minister Rustem Umerov highlighted that this marks the first time a military system in Ukraine has been certified according to NATO standards. Previously, similar systems were assessed based on outdated standards. The cybersecurity testing of Delta lasted 1.5 months, analyzing 162 information protection measures. Built with modern technology, the system meets current cyber protection requirements. This accomplishment was made possible through the cooperation of the MOD Innovation Center with the State Service of Special Communications and Information Protection of Ukraine, the Security Services, BRDO nonprofit, and the 100% Life charity. Yuri Mironenko, the head of the cybersecurity regulator, stated that Delta's certification process would serve as a model for other complex systems, both for combat and non-combat roles. The next step will involve commissioning Delta by Ukraine's defense forces and distributing it amongst combat units to ensure a technological advantage over the enemy. Delta was developed by and for the military, and it's Ukraine's largest integration platform and national data lake operating in the cloud. It uniquely creates situational awareness tools, including a digital map platform that integrates information from various sensors, trackers, radars, and satellite providers, enabling users to track friendly forces and identify enemy positions. The Ministry of Defense announced that Delta would be fully launched into the Ukrainian army this month. The system currently provides the Ukrainian military with situational awareness, streaming services for drones and stationary cameras, secure chat, planning tools, synchronization matrices for reconnaissance and target acquisition assets, and integration of robotic systems. On July 18th, the European Commission approved the first regular payment of approximately 4.2 billion euros under the Ukraine facility to support Ukraine's macro-financial stability and public administration functions. The Commission's approval followed an assessment of Ukraine's payment request from July 9, 2024. It confirmed that Kyiv had met 9 reform indicators, including improvements in public financial management, governance of state-owned enterprises, business environment, energy, and mine clearance. The decision, pending an EU Council approval, will bring the total EU funding for Ukraine to 12 billion euros since the program's inception in March. On February 28, the EU Council approved a package of 50 billion euros in loans and grants for Kyiv, marking the final approval for the 4-year Ukraine Facility Fund. The funding package spans from 2024 to 2027 and includes 33 billion euros in loans and 17 billion euros in grants. Japan plans to provide $3.3 billion in loans to Ukraine as part of a broader support effort from G7 members. This funding will come from interest on Russian sovereign assets frozen due to sanctions imposed after Russia's invasion. Diplomatic sources shared this information with the Kyoto News Agency. The G7 members have been coordinating the disbursement of the aid following an agreement during their June summit in Italy to provide a total of $50 billion in support to Ukraine. The United States and the European Union are expected to contribute $20 billion each, while Japan, Britain, and Canada will cover the remaining $10 billion. The G7 aims to start this project by the end of the year. France, Germany, and Italy are not expected to participate in the lending program at present, as the European Union already has similar support initiatives in place. The G7 finance ministers and central bank chiefs plan to discuss the issue further at a meeting in Rio de Janeiro later this month, alongside their counterparts from the G20 economies. According to a press release from the Belgian clearinghouse Euroclear, 1.5 billion in interest from Russian frozen assets will be transferred to the Ukrainian Fund for Ukraine in July 2024. The West holds around 300 billion in Russian frozen bank assets, mostly within the European Union, and discussions continue on how to use this money for Ukrainian aid and reconstruction. Valerie Urbain, the chief executive officer of Euroclear, stated that in addition to delivering a robust underlying business performance, Euroclear continues to diligently implement the international sanctions on Russian assets. Euroclear is also complying with its important obligations to put the windfall contribution into effect and will soon make the first payment of 1.55 billion to the European Fund for Ukraine. Euroclear will also pay Belgium 836 million euros in corporate taxes from the profits of the Russian assets for the first half of this year. As of June 2024, Euroclear Bank's balance sheet stood at 207 billion, with 173 billion euros linked to sanctioned Russian assets. Ukraine will receive 200 million euros from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development to support Naftogaz, the state-run national oil and gas company, in creating a strategic natural gas reserve and ensuring energy security, according to Ukraine's energy ministry. Ukraine's finance minister, Serhiy Marchenko, and EBRD's managing director for Ukraine and Moldova, Arvid Turkner, signed the relevant guarantee agreement, including 10 joint projects between Ukraine and the EBRD, totaling 2.1 billion euros, being implemented in the public sector. Marchenko stated that through close cooperation with the bank, they're implementing projects in the energy sector, providing liquidity to support key public sector enterprises, rebuilding infrastructure, and supporting businesses in the private sector. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, EBRD's assistance to Ukraine across various areas has reached around 4 billion euros. During their meeting, the parties discussed mechanisms for war risk insurance and the EBRD's support for initiatives in this area, including promoting property insurance against maritime war risk for ship owners exporting goods to Ukraine's Black Sea ports. Ukrainian small and medium-sized businesses have faced challenges such as a slow recovery of sales volumes, staff shortages due to mobilization and migration, limited investment, and increased competition with donor-funded non-government organizations. Volodymyr Kudrytsky, chairman of the management board of Ukrenergo, and Lawrence Gessner, head of the KfW representative office in Ukraine, have signed a €100 million agreement. The funds are allocated from the EU Special Budget Program for Ukraine's investment facility and will be used for several key projects. According to Ukrenergo's press service, the funds will be directed towards modernizing high-voltage substations in the western regions of Ukraine, repairing and recovering equipment destroyed or damaged by Russian attacks, and enhancing the physical security of substations. The grant represents the second phase of a targeted program for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of Ukraine's electricity transmission infrastructure. Previously, on June 11th, Ukrenergo signed a €15 million agreement with KfW for the first phase of a program during the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin. Estonia has also promised to donate equipment from Narva power plants to Ukraine, and Lithuanian company Ignitis Gambia is donating equipment from the Vilnius third combined heat and power plant to Ukraine. Switzerland has opened 56 cases investigating potential violations of sanctions against Russia, resulting in penalties for 15 cases so far. The Swiss authorities have closed about half of the cases, while the rest remain under investigation. The Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs has not disclosed the sectors involved or the names of the companies under scrutiny. Switzerland faced an increase in cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns ahead of the Ukrainian Peace Summit on June 15th through 16th. Despite tighter banking restrictions, some Swiss banks are still willing to accept ruble transfers from clients, potentially including transfers of $10 million or more with special prior approval. A group of activists backed by the far-right Swiss People's Party has collected signatures for a referendum on the country's neutrality, which could affect the sanctions imposed on Russia. Polish Interior Minister Tomasz Siemoniak has announced an investigation into a Polish company that sold parts for Iranian Shahed drones, which Russia has used in its war against Ukraine. The discovery was made by the Internal Security Agency, and the minister described the situation as, quote, absolutely outrageous. According to the minister, an investigation is underway into violations of the arms technology and export regulations. Radio Z reports that a state-owned company from Poznan supplied parts for the Iranian Shahed drones, specifically pumps manufactured by a company owned by the Industrial Development Agency. Siemoniak assured that the prosecutor's office would continue the investigation, press charges, and provide updates on the results. He also emphasized that the government is intensifying efforts to strengthen sanctions. In related news, a German court sentenced a man with dual Russian-German citizenship to 6 years and 9 months in prison for selling electronics to Russian companies for military purposes, defying sanctions. Media reports also revealed that HT Rus, a logistics company owned by the German-registered Hellman Worldwide Logistics, helps Russian manufacturers circumvent sanctions. Lastly, Russian-born businessman Vladimir Likhutin was recently found guilty in Czechia of violating anti-Russian sanctions, marking the first such conviction in the country. Occupation authorities in Sevastopol have implemented power outage schedules, resulting in power being cut off every 2 hours for a total of 12 hours a day, according to Sevastopol Energo on Telegram. Mikhail Razvozhaev, the Russian-appointed governor of Sevastopol, stated that the schedules are necessary due to a malfunction at the Rostov nuclear plant. Previously, temporary energy consumption limits were introduced in southern Russia, including Rostov, Krasnodar, Volgograd, and Stavropol regions, due to the same malfunction. The incident left several million people without electricity. In Sevastopol and temporarily occupied Crimea, traffic lights were also turned off, leading to extensive traffic jams. Hungary is experiencing a fuel shortage after Ukraine decided to ban Russian oil from passing through its territory. In June, Ukraine imposed sanctions blocking the transit of pipeline oil from Lukoil to Central Europe, aiming to cut off a significant source of income for the Kremlin used to support its military. However, the ban does not apply to other Russian oil exporters who still use the pipeline. The restrictions have resulted in supply shortages in Budapest, which relies on Russia for 70% of its oil need, with Lukoil providing half of that volume. The Hungarian foreign minister warned that this measure could jeopardize Hungary's long-term energy security. While Ukrainian authorities initially showed willingness to find a solution, the efforts have so far stalled. In a recent meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Hungary said Budapest had started discussions with Moscow to secure alternative Russian oil supplies. Kremlin press secretary Dmitry Peskov criticized Kyiv's decision as political, claiming the situation is critical for those still buying Russian oil. Iona Gazinska, a researcher for the Center for Eastern Studies, told Politico that Ukraine's ban could lead to severe consequences for Hungary, potentially resulting in high energy prices and electricity shortages within weeks unless a solution is found. She suggested that Hungary could negotiate more imports with Rosneft or increase supplies via Croatia through the Adria pipeline. Additionally, Hungary has emergency strategic reserves sufficient for around 90 days. Lukoil is among several Russian companies supplying oil to Hungary and Slovakia through the southern Druzhba pipeline. On July 18th, the transit stopped. Ukrainian lawmaker Ina Sovsun from the Holos political faction and a member of the parliament's Energy Committee stated that Ukraine had, quote, taken the matter into its own hands, end quote. She criticized the EU and G7 for not imposing stricter sanctions on Russian pipeline oil and emphasized the absurdity of allowing Russia to profit from transporting oil through Ukrainian territory while using the revenue to fund its war efforts. Sovsun also hinted that the ban might aim to pressure Hungary into supporting weapons deliveries to Ukraine and Ukraine's accession into the EU. At the European Political Community Summit, leaders reaffirmed their commitment to support Ukraine, particularly addressing the country's energy needs ahead of winter. When asked if new decisions were made at the summit to support Ukraine, British Prime Minister Starmer clarified that the British government's position remains unchanged. Starmer emphasized that Ukraine is fighting not only for its own people, but also for European values such as freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. European leaders at the summit also engaged in productive discussions on broader European security, promoting democracies from Russian interference, and supporting countries like Moldova facing direct threats. According to the Prime Minister, quote, working with our partners is not just a good idea, it is essential. On July 18th, European leaders gathered at Blenheim Palace for the fourth summit of the European Political Community. This was one of the first international meetings between new British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and world leaders. Blenheim Palace, the birthplace of World War II British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, served as the venue for the summit. The European Political Community is a forum that brings together around 50 European countries to coordinate responses to common issues and problems. Summits are held twice a year, alternately hosted by the EU member state holding the presidency of the Council of the EU and a non-EU member state. Ukraine and Czechia have signed a bilateral security agreement following the G7 Vilnius Declaration on security guarantees for Ukraine, marking the 24th such agreement. The agreement was signed at the European Political Community Summit at the UK by President Zelensky and Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala. The agreement focuses on enhanced military technical cooperation, including the production of firearms, light weapons, UAVs, electronic warfare equipment, and heavy machinery. Czechia plans to assist Ukraine in obtaining artillery shells of 155 and 122 mm caliber with the support of partner countries. Additionally, the agreement aims to strengthen ammunition production capacities in both countries and establish joint ventures. Czechia also agreed to partner with the Dnipropetrovsk region for recovery, reconstruction, and sustainable development. They plan to open a diplomatic office in Dnipro to enhance cooperation and support. On the same day, Ukraine signed a bilateral agreement with Slovenia, marking the 25th agreement. Poland made a statement that it has the necessary infrastructure to maintain all the F-16 fighter jets that Ukraine will receive from Western partners. A former commander of the missile forces and artillery of the Polish Armed Forces and now chairman of the private defense holding RBL, Jaroslaw Krasuski, shared in a comment to Ukrenergo. Poland has 3 bases capable of maintaining the aircraft, including the Military Aviation Enterprise WZL, which is exclusively designed for F-16 maintenance. Krasuski highlighted that RBL, the defense holding he manages, has a company with tasks that include F-16 maintenance and a corresponding certificate from the American side. The holding is ready to send its engineers to any location designated by the Polish state if needed. The presence of strong strike aircraft is crucial for Ukraine's victory. Additionally, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced a positive decision from the Polish government that will expedite the delivery of F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. He shared the news on Twitter, quote, "Yesterday I met with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk at the European Political Community Summit in the UK to discuss strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities. Today we have a positive decision from the Polish government on a specific issue, which will allow Ukraine to receive F-16 jets sooner." Zelensky thanked Tusk for promptly addressing, quote, previous agreements and expressed gratitude to Poland for its robust support for Ukraine. On July 8th, Ukraine and Poland signed a security cooperation agreement. The document includes a mechanism for Poland to intercept Russian missiles and drones in Ukraine's airspace that are launched towards Poland. That is the global news concerning the Russian invasion of Ukraine for this week of July 21st, 2024. Now over to German aid to Ukraine for
Yeah, hello everyone. As always, I will now present the most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine, which this week consists of 2 short news about provided and announced assistance and a brief update, but hopefully a helpful explanation about the German budget issues you probably heard about in the past days. The German Society for International Cooperation has donated robotic equipment for extinguishing fires, moving cars, and other items, 2 off-road buses, trailers, women's clothing for emergency rescue operations, and backpacks for firefighters to the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The handover, which was made public on Thursday, took place via the Strengthening State and Municipal Emergency Services in Ukraine program, which gets financed by the German government. As the Ukrainian ambassador to Germany, Oleksiy Makeyev, confirmed to Rheinische Post, the German government is contributing 10 million euros to the reconstruction of the children's hospital in Kyiv, which was recently severely damaged and partly destroyed by a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile. An additional 4 million euros will be contributed to Ukraine as emergency assistance following the attack. Germany also took in the first 8 Ukrainian children who were inside the hospital during the attack and provides them with medical care in German hospitals. And then we will talk a little bit about the probably the budget issues, which aren't really issues in my opinion. You heard about in the past days. Just as a quick reminder, there were a lot of news reports about Germany just contributing 4 billion euros to Ukraine in the next budget, so the budget for 2025. There was a there was a big outcry in social media, especially on X, of course, about this. Understandable. I mean, when you just read the headline, it sounds terrible, and I do see that. I just want to point out or quickly mention that this is called a draft budget for a reason. It's a draft budget. It doesn't mean that everything which was approved now is set in stone for the next budget, and it will 100% happen that way it currently is. It's a draft budget, which means that it got approved now. It was handed over now, or it will be handed over to the German Bundestag, so the parliament, and the members of parliament within the committees, so the finance committee, for example, they are then talking about this, negotiating and maybe changing the draft budget, and only then it gets approved as a final budget. So the draft budget is not the final one. To the draft budget, there will be made changes to it. And I want to point out that this was the exact case also last year. In June, so months earlier, or maybe also in July, I don't remember anymore, there were also about 4 billion euros in financing in it. In the draft budget, and it later got changed in the Bundestag, and they added another around 3 billion euros to it. That's why the regular German budget for Ukraine aid, at least the military assistance, was about 7 billion euros instead of the 4 billion euros planned for by the Ministry of Finance. So it's the exact same situation as last year. So I'm very confident that this will actually be changed again. Some German politicians within the defense or budget committee of the German Bundestag, for example, said that no money less than what we're providing this year, so 7 billion euros at least, should be earmarked for Ukraine at next year. And there were also reports, for example, by Bild, that the Ministry of Defense is planning with around 15 billion euros. So 11. I'm very sorry. It's getting late and it was a hard day for me. 11 billion euros more than the Ministry of Finance has currently budgeted. So I don't think anyone has to worry too much, at least now. Of course, the German government were asked, so the Minister of Finance Christian Lindner and the Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius, they were asked about why is it so less? I mean, it's about 3 billion less than this year at least, and we're currently negotiating for another 4 billion euros. So it could be even more than that. And they answered that we will only provide, or they plan with only 4 billion euros because of the recently, I believe in June, approved G7 aid slash EU aid. So these up to 50 billion US dollar, which will get paid out to Ukraine until the end of the year, and they can freely decide what they do with it. And they are backed up by the interest of the frozen Russian assets of the G7, and I believe the EU is also involved in this. And I mean, of course, I can see this could work, but I want to point out that first, this is stupid, because when everyone does it and massively reduces its own aid, then it's basically less aid in total for Ukraine than when everybody would just give normal aid, right, without it. And besides that, I think these mechanisms or these aid packages should come on top of what we are doing right now, because when it's seen as a replacement of our current aid, the situation doesn't improve. The situation stays exactly the same as it is right now, and that's, in my opinion, at least, not an option. So yeah, in conclusion, to end this, again, it's a draft budget. In my opinion, you shouldn't worry right now. Of course, if it stays the same, so around 4 billion euros, in November, when everything will be done, most likely, of course, then we should worry. Also, in my opinion, I would worry only then. But until November, I don't worry at all, because it was the exact same situation last year, and Ukraine got another 3 billion euros via the parliament, and I don't see another reason why this shouldn't be the case this time. I mean, the situation hasn't improved in Ukraine. Ukraine isn't winning the war on a military level, so there's no reason to reduce the military assistance. And yeah, until then, we should just see. And if you have any questions next year, yeah, next year also, but next week we will do another live stream. We can have a good discussion about it, and you can ask me a lot of questions. Of course, you don't have to wait. If you have questions regarding the budget for 2025, the German one, and you can send me messages or comment under my tweets on X. Yeah, and basically that's it for this week. I hope you found our little video interesting and helpful, and we will see each other next week during the regular stream. Speak to you soon. Slava Ukraini.
On behalf of the brave.